Welcome once again, my dear student and my viewer and listener, to this revision session for History and Government, Paper 1, KCSE 2022. My name is Mr. Ogada, a teacher of History and Government at Alliance High School. So, in the previous presentations, we have been able to tackle quite a lot the structure of this paper. Then we went to looking at specific questions in section A, running all the way from question 1 to question number 17. Then we looked at section B, where we handled the 4 questions that are tackled in section B. And remember, in section B we have question 18, 19, 20, 21. And just to mention, and for clarification purposes, you are presented with 4 questions, but you're supposed to choose 3. And these 3, if you choose, let's say, question 18, you must do question 18A and 18B. Because some students normally assume that the 3 questions are supposed to be chosen, as in you take question 18A, you go to 19A or 20B, and then you say that you have done 3. If you choose a question, you have to do both part A and part B. So in section B, we give you 4, but you choose 3, the 3 that you can best answer. So now I want to welcome you to the last part of this paper, that is in section C. The last part in this paper, section C. And normally section C talks about government issues. It addresses government issues. And we have 3 questions in section C. That is question 22, A and B, question 23, A and B, question 24, A and B. You are supposed to choose 2. Out of the 3 that you are given, you are supposed to choose your 2 best that you need to answer. So, just as I also mentioned about the structure of section B, I'll also maybe touch on 1 or 2 things about the structure of section C. The 2 sections, B and C, they share a similar structure, where we'll be talking about the high order questions, either open or closed. And by now you should know what I mean when I say open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. You can refer to the previous presentation in the previous recording. But again, the terminologies that we use here still remain the same. Explain, discuss, describe. And all this, you're supposed to give us your answer, and of course with illustration where possible, for you to be able to score your mark. So now allow me to begin by now looking at question number 22. And in this question we were asked about 5 elective positions in a general elections. 5 elective positions in a general elections in Kenya. This is a question that is drawn from chapter 8 of Form 3 work, the formation, structure and the functions of the government of Kenya. And in terms of the formation of the government of Kenya, what forms a government in Kenya is elections. So normally that's the first presentation of the topic, where we handle the elections. And now in this case, the examiner has asked you to identify the 5 elective positions in a general election in Kenya. Identify 5 elective positions in a general election in Kenya. We have points here to look at. 1, the president. The president is elected. Constituency representative or member of the National Assembly. This is where I emphasized when I was explaining the question that was handling the members of the National Assembly. We don't have an MP. We don't have an MP. He is called a member of the National Assembly. A member of the National Assembly. So you'll find that students were writing, as we were marking this question, a student just comes to write a member of parliament. There is nothing like a member of parliament in Kenya. We talk about either a member of the National Assembly elected, or we talk about a senator. So that's a clarification that you need to take into consideration. Then we have the senator. That's also an elective position. Senators are elected, governors are elected, county woman representative is also elected, and then we have member of county assembly also elected. Now, why don't we have answers like deputy president? Or why don't we have an answer like deputy governor? This is the reason. The president and the deputy, they share the same ballot. But the person elected to office is the president. The deputy cannot make it through an election without the president having been elected. You may have a very good deputy, and then the president who is now carrying the flag, the mantle of the party or whichever coalition or as an independent candidate, then the person does not sail through, does not win the hearts of the people. There's nowhere the deputy will go to. So that's why we don't talk about the president, the deputy president and the deputy governor, because they are all elected on the tickets of either the president or the governor. Then the second question was on limitations of parliamentary supremacy in Kenya. What are the limits of the supremacy that parliament has in Kenya? Remember, parliament is a very, very powerful institution in our country. And for your information, it is the body that makes and amends laws in our republic. Without parliament, laws cannot be made, and it's the only body that can make such laws. But despite that power that it has, that so much power that it has, there are certain limitations that are put to regulate on parliamentary supremacy. One, it may be sidestepped when the president declares a state of emergency. That when the country is in a situation where there is need for a state of emergency to be declared, it cannot wait for parliament to convene and to sit and to discuss and deliberate. The president will just go ahead and make that state of emergency. The other time when COVID broke out and former President Uhuru Kenyatta just had to call the nation to a stop and say, you guys, we are closing down. We are closing down the country because of the outbreak of this contagious disease, and that is one of the ways in which parliamentary supremacy can be explained as limited. Then number two is legislative function is bound by international laws, treaties, conventions, agreements, ratification of international laws or treaties. So meaning that the laws that parliament makes must be in coherence with international laws. The laws that our parliamentarians make in our country must never contradict international laws. So we have to share in the same ideals, in the same conventions, in the same laws that govern human life and human rights. So that legislative function is also bound by international laws. Then its legislative authority or oversight role may be undermined by a strong cabinet. You have a very powerful cabinet that can influence issues. A very strong cabinet that can, influence how laws are made. That also limits parliamentary supremacy. Legislation by county governments may also undermine parliamentary supremacy. Remember, county governments make laws at their county assemblies. And whatever laws that they make in those county assemblies cannot be contradicted by laws that have been made by the members of the National Assembly. So therefore, that is also another limitation. Then effectiveness of passing some legislation may be undermined by social, cultural practices or beliefs of the people. It must never make laws that contradict the social, cultural practices or beliefs of the people. So they are bound by those cultures, the social cultural practices of the people. Then it cannot pass laws, or legislation which contravenes the Constitution of Kenya. Parliament cannot pass laws or legislation which contravenes the Constitution of Kenya. Therefore, what I mean here is the supreme law of the land is the Constitution. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution. And there is no single day Parliament can wake up and legislate on laws that will contravene or will contradict the provisions that are found within the Constitution of our Republic. So the Constitution also places a limitation on how far Parliament can make or amend the various laws that they make for the Republic. Then we go to question number 23A. State 3 circumstances which may cause the office of the county governor to become vacant in Kenya. State 3 circumstances which may cause the office of the county governor to become vacant in Kenya. Now, this is a question drawn from the topic devolved government in Form 4 work. Devolved government in Form 4 work. And in devolution, we'll be tackling the structure of the county governments and the structure of the national government. The chief executive of a county government is the county governor. The chief executive of a county government is the county governor. Now, this office can fall vacant because of some reasons that we are going to look at. For example, if the governor dies, that office will become vacant. If the governor is impeached, that office will become vacant. If the governor resigns, fall vacant. And then if the governor is mentally incapacitated or becomes insane. Now, the examiner has asked a question that what are these circumstances that may cause this office to become vacant? I can also now give you another angle how a question of almost a similar magnitude can be tested. For example, I can ask and say, state 3 circumstances which may cause a county governor to be removed from office in Kenya. Circumstances which may cause the county governor to be removed from office in Kenya. So there is the aspect of this office becoming vacant. Then there's also the aspect of this office, somebody is being forced to leave office, to be removed from office. You can be able to check your answers in different notes that you have. For example, we have said if the governor dies, impeachment, resignation, mental incapacitation, or becoming insane. And then if the county government is dissolved by the president, if the county government is dissolved by the president, if he or she is convicted of an offense which attracts an imprisonment of at least 12 months due to gross violation of the Constitution, and also if this person ceases to be eligible to be elected a county governor. So those are the circumstances under which the office of a county governor may fall vacant. Then we go to question number 23B. Explain 6 functions of the President of the Republic of Kenya. Explain 6 functions of the President of the Republic of Kenya. This question is drawn from chapter 8, Formation, Structure and the Functions of the Government of Kenya, in Form 3 work. The functions of the President of the Republic of Kenya. So, what are his functions? 1, presiding over national holidays. According to the Constitution of Kenya 2010, we only have 3 official national public holidays. That is Madaraka Day, we have Labor Day, and we have Jamhuri Day. Madaraka, celebrated on 1st June of every year. Jamhuri, 12th of December every year. Labor Day, 2nd of May. 1st of May every year. So therefore, is the president is the one that leads the celebration of such national public holidays in our republic. Then he or she chairs cabinet meetings where government policies are formulated. He or she chairs cabinet meetings where government policies are formulated. That is a direct point. Then he or she addresses opening of each newly elected parliament where they outline the government agenda. They address the opening of each newly elected parliament. Then they participate in lawmaking by signing or assenting bills into law. Remember, before that bill becomes a law, the presidential assent is needed. Once it is assented to by the president, then they can now proceed to gazette it into law that will govern the nation. Then he or she is the head of state or head of government, hence represents the county at local or international level. The head of state or government representing is the face of the republic. Anytime he speaks on international forums, they'll be speaking on behalf of the people of Kenya. Then he or she nominates or appoints with approval of parliament. Remember the word with approval of parliament. Senior public officers such as cabinet secretaries, the attorney general, the ambassadors who assist in governing the country. So these senior positions of responsibility, they must be vetted by parliament. So even if the president was to nominate, actually the president simply nominates and then parliament approves, then finally he appoints. So appointment cannot take place before approval by parliament. Then he or she confers honors or medals to persons who have given distinguished service to the nation. They confer honors to the deserving Kenyans that have served the nation in different capacities. Then they exercise the power of mercy through pardoning persons convicted of various minor offenses. Where every year the president has that, provision where he can pardon petty offenders and release them, hoping that they have changed or they have transformed and be useful and better people in the society. Then he or she defends the Constitution by ensuring adherence to the rule of law. He or she defends the Constitution by ensuring adherence to the rule of law. He is supposed to be protected. He is the custodian of the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya. Then he or she once a year gives a report or address to the nation on the progress or state of the nation address on achievements in realization of national values. So the president here must address the nation to speak about the achievements that his or her government has achieved so far. Then he or she ensures fulfillment of international obligations or treaties by relevant government department. That is a clear point that they really have to have that he has to safeguard foreign diplomacy to ensure that Kenya is in good books with those international countries out there. Then they receive foreign diplomats accredited to the country. He or she receives diplomats accredited to the country. They welcome diplomats that come from different countries to represent their countries, and the president is the one supposed to welcome them. They can also declare a state of emergency with the approval of parliament. And with the approval of parliament, they can declare war. Look at how that question is framed, that they can declare a state of emergency, and with the approval of parliament, they can also declare war. That's also a function of the president. Now, I want to draw to your attention something that is worth understanding. What is the difference between the functions of the president and the powers of the president. Because in this instance, you were asked about the functions of the President of the Republic of Kenya. What if next time you are asked about the powers of the President of the Republic of Kenya? How do you draw a line to know that this is a function and this is a power of the President? And my response will be very simple. That functions can be delegated. Let's say he or she can delegate to his deputy. That's a function. But a power can never be delegated. For example, a power like the commander-in-chief of the Kenya Defense Forces. That is a power that cannot be delegated whatsoever. It cannot be delegated. So functions are delegatable. Powers are non-delegatable. You cannot delegate powers that are conferred to the office of the presidency. Anyway, you can be able to check your different revision books and write down those powers as needed. Then our last question in section C, identify 3 funds into which the government of Kenya deposits its revenue. This is from the topic Public Revenue and Expenditure in Kenya. Public revenue and expenditure in Kenya. Again, this topic also handles both the 2 forms of government, the 2 tiers of government, that is the county governments and the national government. So when we are asked about these funds into which the government of Kenya deposits its revenue, it brings on board both the county government and the national government. So we begin by talking about consolidated fund. Consolidated fund. Consolidated fund is that account into which all revenues raised by the national government are deposited. Whatever monies the national government raises, be it through taxes, be it through loans, grants, whatever comes as a revenue to the national government, it is deposited in one national account called the Consolidated Fund. Answer number 2 is the Revenue Fund. The Revenue Fund is the account into which all revenues, all monies raised by the county governments are deposited, whether it is through the 15% share from the national revenue, or it is loans, or it is grants, or you talk about taxes that are raised by the county governments. Now, all that monies, the county governments deposit it into one single account, and that one single account is called the Revenue Fund. The third fund is the Contingencies Fund. This is a fund that is set aside for emergency, unforeseen situations, emergencies that, something happens without having really planned for it. Like when COVID-19 broke out, nobody had foreseen COVID-19 coming, but it became an emergency, a national crisis, and therefore there were monies that were set in that account that were supposed to be used to arrest that situation. Then lastly, we have the Equalization Fund. The Equalization Fund is a fund that is an account that is set aside to provide services to the marginalized groups, marginalized communities, so that their status can be raised to the levels of these other developed groups. A fund that is used to raise the status of counties that are marginalized, communities that are marginalized. So there is that money that is given to those deserving communities that are marginalized or the minor group. Then they use it to also raise the status of services that they provide to the people. This money can be used for provision of water, provision of education services, provision of health services, etc. So those are the 4 types of accounts that the government of Kenya deposits its revenue. Then question 24B, discuss 6 taxes. Discuss 6 taxes levied by the national government of Kenya. Discuss 6 taxes levied by the national government of Kenya. Remember, again, this from the topic of public revenue and expenditure. Public revenue and expenditure. What are these taxes that are levied by the national, not county governments, but national government? 1, we have excise duty, which is charged on goods that are locally produced or sold within the country. So whatever goods that are locally produced and are sold within, the tax that you pay for, trading with such goods, it is called the excise duty. Then we have value added tax, VAT, which is paid to specific goods such as petroleum products, sugar, electronic equipment. Specific goods attract a certain percentage. Like in our case, the VAT that is normally levied on these goods is 16%. So we have the 16% VAT. It's a type of tax. Then we have investment revenue. Investment revenue, which is generated by government bodies or parastatals like KPLC, Postal Corporation, Kenya Railway. Investment revenue generated by government bodies which are called parastatals. So whatever revenues we get from such bodies, it's also part of the tax called the investment revenue. Then trading licenses paid by traders wishing to operate businesses or those that already are operating businesses. So as a trader, as a business person, there is that permit that you have to acquire from the government every month. There are those licenses that you need to facilitate the running of that business. That is called the trading licenses. It's also a form of tax. Then we have land rates. Land rates paid by citizens or companies such as stamp duty, rent, standing premium on plots, land adjudication or court cases fees. So any tax that is raised as far as the use of land is concerned, that is called land rate. Then we have loan interest receipts from government bodies or agencies that pay interest on money advanced to them by the exchequer. Loan interest receipts from government bodies or agencies that pay interest on money. So you take that loan from the government, of course, there is that interest that you'll be forced to pay it with. That interest goes also as part of taxes that are used for our government, by our government. Then we have court fines. Court fines are charged on persons found guilty by courts of law. Court fines are charged on persons found guilty by court of law. That's a direct point whereby you are convicted of a crime, you are supposed to pay certain fine. That becomes also part of ways in which the government raises funds, taxes. Then tourism fees, which are paid by local or foreign tourists as entrance fees into game reserves or national parks or other tourist attraction sites. Anything to do with tourism, the fees that you pay, as far as tourism is concerned, also goes to the government account as a form of tax that it levies. Then lastly, we have domestic borrowing, where the government raises revenue through sale of treasury bills or treasury bonds. Domestic borrowing. The government can also actually borrow domestically, and therefore that will also be able to form part of it. I think we have a few points here that I would wish to just highlight on. We have house rates or rent paid by or for the use of or hired government buildings or facilities. You use a government building or facility, you are supposed to pay some rate. Custom duty is a tax levied on goods imported into the country. That's custom duty. Or exported. Goods that either leave or enter the country, they all attract the customs duty tax. Then traffic revenue tax, levied on traffic related services like driving licenses, airport tax, road maintenance levy. So basically, my good students, we have been able to look at KCSE 2022 paper 1, And mine is to wish you all the best and to pray that you will put more effort into your revision as you prepare for the national examinations. My name is Mr. Edwin Ogada, a teacher of history and government at Alliance High School, and also the author of KCSE Familiar History and Government and Achievers History and Government, published by the East African Educational Publishers. Otherwise, thank you and may God bless you. Bye-bye.